right, before we get too far into the preview here, a couple of reminders that will be helpful. You do have a couple of sheets that might be able to help you out with the quiz upcoming. Again, the song sheet from when you had to deal with my attempt at song to help out with some completing the square stuff, that's available to you. It's on colored paper. The other one, the one we got later last week, on your completing the square forms with Vertex and circle form, also usable tomorrow and also available in front of the folders if you need them. All right, down to business. Solve each equation by completing the square. Remember the song, or maybe try not to. I don't know. So my first thing, I need my x's alone. I need to find b. Okay, well in this case it's my r's. I need my r's alone. Well, the only way to do that is to get my 99 to the other side. But I remember one other thing with this. I remember that there's going to be a blank on each side when I'm completing the square. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that in here while I do that. So now, what goes in the blank? Cut b in half. We'll talk about that in a second. Square it. Add it in my blanks. So, there's my b. Okay? Whatever's in front of my plain old x, or in this case, r term. So negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. And square it. The parentheses are important. Okay? We never will get a negative number when we do our squared. Add it here, add it there. All right. So next, my job is to turn my perfect square trinomial into the square of a binomial. Which again, should be fairly easy. It's just half of my b, or the number I did in parentheses, if I did my side work. And now all of a sudden, it's into a form, hopefully, that's fairly easy to remember. The only way I can get rid of the square, just the square root. I'm not distributing, I'm not foiling. Plus minus is key. Square root plus minus is key. So see, all these little things you hopefully should forget should be there waiting for you to try and help you out. And the square root of 100, if you plug it in your calculator, actually comes out nice. That's kind of nice. But reminder here again at the end where we can get ourselves into trouble if we're not careful. So at this point, those will cancel out. Again, the 1 does not just get added to my 10 and become plus or minus 9. That is not how this works. So I've got 1 plus or minus 10. Now, if you left it that way, okay, technically you're okay. If this was a 3-point question, you'd probably get dinged for like a half out of 3. You're like, why am I getting dinged for a half? Because there's no radicals here, so I can actually simplify this. I can actually do 1 plus 10 and get an answer. I can do 1 minus 10 and get an answer. Okay, so that's the goal when there's no radical. If there's a radical, I'm not going to be able to go that far. I'm going to have to leave it here. But if I can, I should, and I need to. Same thing rolling on number 2. So as you start to look at these, and you're like, okay, got to get my variables alone first. And the nice thing is, now we got the first one to kind of use as our example. So it shouldn't take us as long to fight through here, hopefully. Excuse me. Find your b. Have it. Square it. And this is why we put the blanks in, to remind us where it goes. So those first couple of steps aren't too bad, especially again when you've got the help available. Again, to get my square of a binomial, I either take half b, so half of negative 14 is negative 7, or I just take the number from my parentheses. Again, square roots. The only way I can get to the p, I cannot add the 7 yet. It's stuck in the parentheses, because I've seen that happen a time or two. So I get to 67. And what's becoming regular in all these videos is you're going to have the moment where it sounds like I'm doing this in a tunnel. So I'm going to get a calculator. And so I take the 67 and I put it in. And I find out, what do I find out? Cut the intensity with a knife here. I get a decimal. We don't do decimals. Okay, we do exact answers. That decimal just shook the whole paper. So now what I typically would do is, if needed, I would pull out, not that we don't have enough sheets to help already, I'd pull out my perfect squares sheet if I need to, and I'd start trying to divide some of those numbers into 67 to see, does something go in evenly? Well, here's what I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out it doesn't. So I get my plus minus, and I leave my radical alone. And so now, a little bit different than number 1 was, okay, again, this doesn't have a radical, this does. Okay, I can't put these together. This is not going to become the square root of 60. It's not going to become the square root of 74. Think of this like a variable. This doesn't have one, this does. That's as far as I'm going. That can happen sometimes. Now, this last one we're going to do is kind of a combination of the two. You may break everything down. You may be able to break nothing down. I wonder what this last one is going to be. So you're like, okay, already this is kind of getting to be tedious. It's the same thing. And it's true. You're right. But the one nice thing of doing 3 of these right off the bat is you're going to be able to roll through the rest of this. Oops, almost forgot my other blank. Bless you. So there's my B. We'll have it. Square it. We'll add it here. We'll add it there. We'll get my square of a binomial. Again, half of this, or the number in parentheses. I still say doing the side work is worth it. Now this time, here's where this one's going to take a little twist on us. So I see the square root of 80. I know it's not a perfect square. I get a decimal. But if I start trying some of my perfect squares out, and I don't know, I mean, you can go right in order. You can be like, Hardy, you're going to do all this and there's nothing again. Nope. Bingo. Okay. Notice I started from the bigger ones and worked my way down, because there is another value that would go into 80. 4 would. But it's not the biggest one, and I'd have to do it twice. So by starting up high, now I see, okay, 16 and 5. So let's work this out here. 16 and 5. One of those will break down. The other one will not. So I've got 4 square root of 5. And once you break down a radical, it's done being broken down. Don't sit there and go, ooh, 4 is a perfect square. I'll square root it too. Okay, we're already out on good behavior radical jail. We don't have to be changed anymore. So my last step, and again, this tends to be the spot where we run into trouble, so we got to pay special attention, is understanding on this problem, that's the end. I'm done. You're like, but wait a minute, this number's not under a radical. Why can't I do negative 3 plus 4, negative 3 minus 4? It's attached to the square root of 5, okay? Treat this like a variable. You wouldn't do negative 3 plus 4x is negative 1x, okay? You wouldn't do that. So don't associate yourself with the shady characters over here. That one's set. Those are the 3 options you can run into with completing the square. Total breakdown, no breakdown, kind of breakdown. But again, with your sheets and your help, I don't think that's going to be too bad. So as we move down a little, use completing the square to write the standard form equation of a circle. Okay, again, you shouldn't have to come up and ask me, well, what's that look like? You've got it on the sheet. So remember, with these, my first job is to get my x's together with a blank. Get my y's together with a blank. And then take my constant term, no variable, move it to the other side. And again, you've got to do an opposite to do this. And then add those blanks that you added to x and y. We need to be, equally weighted. 2 blanks on this side, 2 blanks on this side, because we don't want to change the value of the problem. So now I do all my little side work things. Move this over a little bit. So I still take my b. I still have it. I still square it. Again, that's where the colors can come in handy because I just put it in the same colored blank. Do the same thing with my y's. Yes, the number's going to be big. That's okay. Can it be a little tedious? Yes. Is it attention to detail? Absolutely. Here's my number of parentheses for my x. There's my number in parentheses for my y. And over here, let's see here. Negative 89 plus 4 plus 121 is 36. And I am in standard form. Now let's say I asked you to find the center and the radius. I know it doesn't say on here. I'm just saying. Remember, if I'm looking for the center, it's the opposite of h, the opposite of k, and my radius is just going to be the square root of whatever this number is. Again, not saying I'm going to ask for that. I'm just saying we're good to be prepared. So we're good with that. And like we've done before, now we're going to have access to that when we pair these other guys off. So again, x's with a blank, y's with a blank, and again the colors can come in handy. Do the opposite of my constant term to get it to the other side. A little scooch over here should fit us in okay. And now I'm off doing my side work. Now, I'm sure oh my goodness, I'm thinking ahead. All right. Let's get that fixed. That is a negative 7. I got thinking a little too far ahead. But back to what I was saying. I get to a point where some people start to figure out that they can get from here to their square of a binomial form quickly without maybe doing all the side work. But here's the problem. They tend to forget about this then, and then they're coming up asking me, how do I take the square root of negative 40? And I'm like, you're skipping too many steps. So be careful when you're doing this. Even if you find yourself to be an expert, it's still worth the time to go ahead and get those things situated. So once I've got my blanks figured out and filled, I go to my binomial form. Half of negative 14 is negative 7. And again, little detailed things. Remember your squared. Remember the plus in the middle. You've got a form sheet, so there's really not a reason to mess this up. Half of 8 is 4. Add up my other stuff on the other side. And again, that's my standard form. But if I was asked for the center and radius, opposite of h, opposite of k, square root of my r squared. And there we go. Okay, so a lot of stuff, but not a lot of hard stuff. We're being really detailed as we go here. All right, so our third way, because we did 3 ways of completing the square, our third way is getting into vertex form. And again, we have some help for that. A little bit different with our grouping and our blanks, but we know how to do it from here, and then we know what form we're working towards. So here, blank with the y. Group my m's with a blank, so each variable gets its own blanking. But the 55 kind of stays out to the side. Don't subtract it. Okay, it's not like regular completing the square. We're not trying to isolate the m's. We're just regrouping them. So here, b divided by 2, nothing different. Square it, nothing different. Add it in both the blanks, even though they're in a different spot. Same concept. Get my square of a binomial. Half of negative 16 is negative 8. And we're not quite there because remember, to be in vertex form, y's got to be alone. And if you were asked for the vertex, now this one's a little different, remember. Opposite of h, just like it is in the center of a circle, but it's plus k, which means you keep the sign on your second value. So again, with the help sheets, we should be able to keep these straight where the blanks and things go. It shouldn't be as rough of an experience, at least I hope not. Whoops, I'm off the screen. All right, we're back. But even as you do it on here, I still am going to suggest that you need to do this yourself a few times, whether it's on an assignment you haven't finished or just rewriting a couple of these down later. Because just seeing me do it now, we've talked about the whole spoon feeding thing. If you're being spoon fed and then I ask you to feed yourself on a quiz, that's where some of you get in trouble. Half a b. And again, the only thing keeping me from being in vertex form, getting y alone. And don't freak out if numbers get big. It's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong. I may double check something if I get something that big, but we don't normally see 100 when we're talking about these, but we've done all our work right. So my vertex would be opposite of h and k. So that basically covers the stuff that we were talking about this week. Then the fun starts. Yes, other things are going to come back in. I'm going to keep bringing stuff back from the quadratics unit because I want to see if we're remembering it or if we're actually working on any of this stuff if it doesn't quite go so well, because we can't just forget it and act like it doesn't exist. So, solve by factoring. Oh, gosh. You mean you're going to start showing that? Yep, here I come again. Anything in common. Anything divide into all 3 of those. You may not notice the 3 right away, but it's always something worth looking into. So here, for instance, if I can get rid of my glare, we know 3 goes into 3, and then just quick check the other ones. Oops, let's try it again. Okay, it'll even help me with what values to put back in there. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. I can just put k squared. If I want to put a 1, I can. 27 divided by 3. And the calculator can help if it needs to. Now, all I'm left factoring is what's in the parentheses. Now, does that mean the 3 disappears? No, the 3 is still there to make this equal at the end. I'm multiplying to get the number on the end and adding to get the number in the middle. And fortunately, 14, you don't have many options. It's 14 and 1 or 7 and 2. Well, which one adds up to 9? 7 and 2 do. So as far as factoring goes, we're good. But solve it. Solve it means anything that has a variable. K plus 7, K plus 2. We set them equal to 0 and we solve the mini equations. Minus the 7, minus the 2, and we're good. A lot of you have this homework laying around in some places that you haven't done it before. So again, there's an opportunity. I look at number 9. You know what I'm going to do. Anything in common to all terms. Okay? Some of you like taking things like you take x's out of these. You can't do it. It's all or nothing. Is there something that all 3 of those terms have in common? No, not in this case. If you're a guess and checker, you jump into guess and check at this case. If you're a slide and divider, that's the route we go. And that's the route I'm going to go here because most of you attempt this and run into the same issue. And I'm going to try and help you fix that. So slide my 3 down, we multiply. Now it becomes a diamond like the last problem was. Luckily, all my signs are the same. That makes this a little easier. So multiply to 30 and add to 17. Now, that may not be as obvious right off the bat for some of you. Some of you will think about, 6 and 5 and 1 and 30, but neither of those add up to 17. There you go. That's when we start taking numbers and divide them into the calculator. We try 30 divided by 2, and then we check. And we're like, ooh, wait. 2 and 15. Yeah, that adds up to 17. Cool. But here's where some of you get stuck. You're setting these equal to 0, and you're telling me the answer is -2 and -15. Here's the problem. This is a slide and divide. We did the sliding. We've got to remember the dividing before we get to the answer step. And this is also the place that if I punch one in and get a decimal, and I do math enter, and it's still the same idea, that I swing that back to the front. But if it goes in nice, that's nice. Okay, you've got to get to the correct factored form before you set them equal to 0. Because factoring is part of the deal here. So now, I set each of those equal to 0. And now I can minus my 2, divide by 3, okay, and get my answers. But again, it's going to be about practicing somewhat. I'm not going to fib to you and tell you it doesn't. It matters, okay? So again, even if it's grabbing an extra one of these, which you're free to do when you're getting ready to go and trying to do it on your own and using this as your key, not a bad idea. Just saying. So, more review on the back. Solve by taking square roots. Remember, these are the ones where we're going to have plus minus. We're going to get 2 answers. First job, get my squared term alone. And these are ones that quite a few of you were pretty good on the other quiz that we did with these. Now here, you're going to be tempted. You're going to want to take the square root right away, especially when you see 25s. Don't do it. Get k squared alone before you do anything else. Once k squared's alone, now you can do the square root thing. And remember the plus minus. You've done all this good work to just write the answer as 1 and then get half off. And I'm like, ugh. Okay, don't lose the easy points. And the same thing is going to go on number 11. But there's going to be one twist on this one when we get to the end. So as I start working on getting n squared by itself, now I'm ready to take my square root. I've got my n squared by itself. But be careful. Again, I take the square root of 50, I see a decimal. Doesn't mean I can't do anything. Okay? Start trying to divide some perfect squares in. Ooh, 25 and 2. And like we've mentioned before, when we do this, one's going to break down, one isn't. 5 broke down, 2 did not. Answer. Woo-hoo. But again, I got to have my practice in to be able to do it. And then finally, we're going to do our graphing, one of each type. I'm even going to be nice. Okay, identify the vertex, sketch the graph. Hint, negative b over 2a. You're like, what's that? That is the x value of my vertex. So here, my a is negative 1, my b is 2. So my x is opposite of b over 2 times a. Okay, and I have to do this part. The rest I can get some help if I need. But I got to get this part right. So once I get that, to get y, I'm just going to plug this in. Now here's the one place I got to be careful on this one. Okay, I'm just squaring the x value. Okay, I'm squaring the 1 and then the negative comes on later. Do not use parentheses around the negative, because that's just going to be sitting out front. I'm just squaring my x. Because now whether I plug it in the calculator or I do it in my head, I can get my vertex. Now, for those of you that are always looking for that shortcut, okay, or that way to double check something because you're not sure and you're kind of wondering, okay, here's how we're going to double check. We're going to type it in the calculator, and we're going to pull the chart. And if you remember from before, if I found the vertex, I'm going to see symmetry. I'm going to see the same numbers above and below my vertex. Well, I notice here in the middle I've got 1, 4, but then look above and below. 3, 3, 0, 0, negative 5, negative 5, negative 12, negative 12, negative 21, negative 21. Sweet, I did that right. And to be perfectly honest, since I already have them here, I may as well use the chart. 0, 3, 2, 3, 3, 0, negative 1, 0. Now you're like, okay, Hardy, I was with you until the whole calculator thing. Me and button presses in the calculator, I'm not a big fan. Okay, here's your other option, which isn't a bad one. If you want to make a chart of these, okay, and you stick your vertex in the middle, we've talked about this before, and I take my values around the outside. And the reason I'm doing them in colors is, remember, the two blue ones are both going to get the same answer. So if I plug in 0, I love plugging in 0, 0 plus 0 plus 3 is 3. There, I'd have gotten those two dots. Then let's say I plug in 3. Okay, negative 3. Okay, 3 squared is 9, so that would be negative 9. Then 2 times 3 is 6, plus 3 would be negative 3 plus 3 is 0. Okay? I can just use my brain or the calculator manually to get those points if I don't like playing with the calculator because it drives me crazy. Okay, there's lots of ways you can tackle this. You even could do the 1-3 pattern that we talked about before, except it's -1, so it's down 1 over 1, down 3 over 1. So there's 3 ways you can get there if you need to. And finally, we're going to hit our vertex form, which is actually the easiest way to do this, thank goodness. So 13, identify the vertex. I can do that right now. Opposite of H, and you've actually got this on your purple sheet. 3, -2. And then again at this point, pick how you want to do it. If you're going to chart it, get your vertex in the middle. Add 1 as you go to the right, -1 as you go to the left. And then we're just going to plug numbers in. 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 squared is still 1. 2 times 1 is 2, minus 2 is 0. I'll show you on the calculator too here momentarily. Okay, if I plug in 5. 5 minus 3, you could plug that in the calculator too if you wanted to. 5 minus 3 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Minus 2 is 6. Oops, I put my dot over too far, didn't I? And if you wanted a way of double checking, or even just the original way of doing it, if you want to go that route, I just type it in. Pull my chart. Get my vertex in the middle. So I got to get 3, -2 in the middle. There it is. This is also nice because let's say, for instance, you write -3, -2 instead, and you try to get that in the middle. You're like, ooh, I'm not seeing symmetry. I do here, though. And check out my values. 2, 0, and 4, 0. There they are. 5, 6, and 1, 6. There they are. Okay. This is the preview. What are my questions are going to be on the quiz? Oh, 13. Definitely doable within a class period. I can't have some of you walking up at the end and telling me I got 5 problems left, I need more time. No. Okay? This is going to get done tomorrow. It's going to be the only thing we're doing in class. So practice some more if you need to. Grab an extra review if you need to. Do the homework now that you've seen this again if you need to give you the retake option and to get you ready for it. If you do those things, this should be a really, really good one going into progress report.